Thank you for tuning into David's Life and Observation with your host, David Welch. So let's talk about Minneapolis defunding the police and what that means, actually. Sorry, I got a wild hair over here. So defunding the police is something that we have been talking about for a long time, but never ever put into action. If anybody has put it into action, it's a very, very small level because some police departments get defunded because they don't have the resources to defend against bad policing. So if a law enforcement officer not just gets a complaint filed, but a lawsuit filed against them, and they're from a small department, it's a likelihood that that department is going to get eaten. And the city council will be like, "Yo, your lawsuit costs more than the entire funding of that department. Got to go, bud." Sorry, but it's just the way it is. Now, when you're trying to defund a big ass police department like the Minneapolis PD, and those who are trying to retire early, no way. They're not meeting their contractual obligation. Don't retire them. Don't let them build the city for millions and millions of dollars, and they're all criminals. How are you going to give 46 criminals who walked away from their job a pension? They need to save their own money. Like, I'm sorry. They're not service members, they're not soldiers. Why are they getting this, ungodly benefits package for walking away from their job? I call that quitting. Like, they're not, "Oh, I'm just going to file this retirement package." Like, no, they're quitting their job. No retirement package at all. Sorry, you quit. You walked away from the position. Why the fuck would you get a retirement package? All because you guys couldn't come to the realization that one of your guys or three of your guys pushed an elderly man to the ground, and that you guys shot into a house with rubber bullets with no provocation, and that it's your department that fucked up and why we kicked off a whole season of looting and rioting. Like, you guys can't fathom that you're the fucking problem? Lord almighty. And you wonder why you're being defunded? Like, weed out all the bad rats. Get them out of there. Fire the police chief. Fire everybody. Everybody. And then make it mandatory that they can't turn off their body cams. Like, if they have the ability and the power to turn on and off their body cams or mute their body cam, then it's not serving its purpose. It's something that they can corrupt. Same thing with dash cams. They can corrupt the footage and the data. They can literally... And if you think they don't, you are sadly freaking mistaken. So what if it catches them, in a moment of an indecency? Okay, I understand, like, cutting that out. Hey, them going to the bathroom? Fine, but that shit should be on the entire shift. It should catch what they say, because what they say is company business. It's public knowledge. It should be. What they do with their time is public information. So that way, one, we can help better understand that if they're stagnant for 12 hours of a shift and they're not doing anything, they're not being productive, why are we paying them such a high, like, extortion rate? I don't get it. Like, just by having the tool belt on your fucking waist makes you somehow Batman, and you can go ahead and charge the city you live in or maybe not even the city you live in, but $100,000 to fucking feed you and your family, and you don't even have a fucking college degree, or even if you have a college degree, you still somehow manage to rack up complaints against you and use of force actions that have cost the city money. And then, not to mention gypsy cops. We have gypsy cops who have committed crimes in other departments, and because they still somehow manage to hold on to their post certification, they go ahead and jump to another department. Like, that's what's going to happen. These Minneapolis police officers, all they're going to do is go to a different department. Like, they're still going to have their post certification. So defunding them should include a very aggressive stance on who you hire coming up. It should be required that they at least hold a bachelor's degree. Required. Like, I would have the same fucking standards as the FBI. Like, why are we treating those people who they manage to still fuck up any different than the local law enforcement? Is it because that community is just not that educated? Not even the case. If you're going to compensate someone six figures, they better have a fucking degree, or they better have a special skill set that or certifications that I just can't seem to wrap my head around to compensate for. Like, what these dudes literally do is they drive around, they pull people over, they harass people, they fine people, they don't do any good in the community. I mean, very, very seldom do they do actual good in the community. Like, for some reason in my brain, I see detectives and higher up investigators as, more valuable as they should be. And I understand it takes a while to get there, but beat cops are the ones that are tearing down your police force. They're the ones who are the most corrupt, the ones that are out on patrol every day. And you got mooks, that are fucking jacked up on steroids. Like, how's that not even an issue? How is that like somehow like a mystical thing to think about? Like, why would a department, why would a business or an occupation have a community of people that utterly refuse drug testing? Because they're on drugs. They are on the roids. They're on the juice. Like, an incredible amount of police officers are juicing, or they're doing TRT, or they're doing some sort of body enhancement in order to, develop this rage and disdain for the American people and then act out on it. Like, half these fools don't even go to the gym, and the only source of their rage, the only outlet that they have, is on the people that they serve. So, like, if you wonder why there's so many use of force incidents, especially with like specific officers, I think if you reach the number of 2 or 3 use of force incidents and you have that many complaints against you, we have officers out there that have 30, 40 plus complaints for use of force or for violating someone's rights, and you don't think it's important to get rid of someone before they get to that point. But then you have a culture of policing that is, hey, if my brother does dirt, I gotta stay silent because of the thin blue line. What? What? I'm sorry. Even if a good buddy of mine at work is doing cocaine and stuff, I'm like, dude, no, no, no. What are you doing? Like, you're destroying yourself. Like, I would encourage them, hey man, check into rehab. But if you're messing up at work and you're doing something illicit and you're doing it at work, I'm sorry. If I have that knowledge, it's not worth it to my job to lose my job, because that person can easily say, oh well, Dave knew for years, or Dave knew for months. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'd rather get you fired from a vocation so that you can go get treatment, so that you can go get help. Or there should be a way to maintain your job and go into treatment. Like, how is that not a thing? Like, there should be like way more alternatives for people, because 84% of the population in prison and jail were for non-violent crimes. That should like flabbergast the shit out of you. And a lot of these people don't need jail, they need treatment. And people in the prison system and the jail system are extremely freaking harsh. They will and have and will continue to let people die and perish in custody. How? That is part of the reform for law enforcement, is the in custody process. There should be, now, am I saying everybody deserves kid gloves? No. But what I am saying is that if someone is requesting medical attention, whether it's on the street or whether it's, in the law enforcement, prison or jail, hire more staff to deal with that. Hire more doctors, more physicians, hire more nurses. Why is there one nurse for a whole population of, I don't know, hundreds of inmates, or 1,000 inmates? You got one nurse, 2 nurses? You got one nurse practitioner? Like, what? What? No, have freaking MDs on scene. Have a surgical room. Have an operating table. Have the necessary medical supplies and things to, treat things as they come in. Like if you don't have those resources at a facility where you're taking people into custody, regardless of whatever crime they've committed, and you can't treat them, you don't deserve to house people. You don't deserve to have anyone in custody. And for the people that have forgotten kind of like what defunding actually looks like, it's a process of weeding out the nonsense. Like defunding doesn't mean like, hey, we're going to get rid of everything and everybody. It just means, hey, we're not doing no knock raids anymore. So for you to have a budget for that, we're taking it away. For you to, have military grade weaponry and surplus to literally suppress people, no, we're not doing that anymore. There's no reason you need a tank. There's no reason you need up armored vehicles. You're not in a war torn country. You're in the United States of America, where it is our right to shoot you motherfuckers who violate our rights. Do we have to be in the right? Yes. But just because there is a simple violation, like how often is it that something trivial leads to the death of somebody? And it's all because of the rage and ego of the police officer that leads to that. Like they can't let shit go. Like if you offend them, they will do everything in their power to harm you or those you love. Like if that's not gang mentality, I don't know what is. So hurting them in the pocketbook is gonna matter. But here's how I would defund. If you're gonna take away their big safety net of lawsuit money, make them have insurance, make them pay for their mechanism to have a safety net, so that, and then get rid of qualified immunity. You get rid of that, I guarantee the use of force incidents, I guarantee the amount of corrupt policing will fucking decrease, because they know that they're going to be on the hook for mistakes that they make. Like you have to keep them accountable. The whole fact that we're here is because of a history of not keeping law enforcement accountable. We have a history of this. So in order to prevent that, we have to, one, demand that their body cameras, and one, that they have body cameras, two, that they can't be altered, fucked with, turned off. And we see it so many times. Like how is 13 officers and some National Guardsmen going to murder a guy and not one person catch it on film? It's because they knew they were going to murder that person. Or, hey, if a person's on their knees, hands are up, and you murdered that person, every officer in that situation needs to go to prison, because somebody somewhere did not step in and say, yo, what are you doing? Or if they didn't slap handcuffs on that officer that pulled the trigger, and it's multiple officers, and you're just trying to pin it on one officer, no. Everybody who pulled the trigger in that situation deserves to go to prison. They deserve to get locked up themselves. No more qualified immunity. No more 60 days paid leave. Their paid leave should be done in the jail facility. I'm a firm believer of that. Like, why is it that you get to go home in the comfort of your family when anybody else who commits a crime gets taken away from their family and gets put in a jail cell? Like, I'm sorry, hey, you guys got 60 days paid leave, but it's all going to be here. You have access to the internet and several creature comforts, but yeah, it's still going to be in a cell. It's still going to be, you're still going to have access, or you're still not going to be able to leave, because as soon as they leave, their case is compromised, because they're not being interviewed. They're in their clusterfuck of buddies who are going to say, hey man, hey, I had to deal with this, say this. Like, if you don't believe that cover up shit happens, you are sadly and woefully mistaken. And the defunding needs to go towards, who really needs to be affected are judges. Judges need to be removed constantly, and there needs to be a constant cycle of, if you got a judge that's been on the bench for 30 plus years, how in touch of reality is that guy? He's not, because he's played into a system that is. And then prosecutors, like, I have no idea how they have any immunity. Like, how they have, if they've maliciously prosecuted someone, or if the department, the department had a situation where, a guy's been on death row for 30 years and they knowingly coerced. I'm sorry, but even if you're a retired cop at that point, dude, I'm yanking your pension. I'm dragging you in front of the judge, and you're gonna serve prison time for that false accusation. That time that guy spent, you should automatically have that time. 30 years. Sorry, guy. You're in your 60s, you're in your 70s yourself. Good luck. There needs to be punishment and I'm so glad that there's finally going to be Karens out there that are going to get punished for the false calls about just because there's a black man or a Latino man or even a white man in your neighborhood that's not doing something illegal, but you just want to call on them anyway, and you want to get them hemmed up because they happen to be in your neighborhood and you don't agree with their politics or agree with their shirt or agree with their tattoos or agree with their skin color. I'm sorry, but you need to be in jail. Like, you need to be you called because that guy wasn't committing a crime. Here, let me go ahead and have this conversation with you. Throw them cuffs on. Bye, Karen. Adios. It should be a mandatory 90 days jail sentence. It should be up to $5,000 in fines or more, at least $10,000. Why not? And no bail. That's it. There's no bail. It's just that's it. You called with the intention to get that person who wasn't breaking the law intentionally fucked up by police. Like, you deserve prison time. And it's not, you can't use ignorance as an excuse. The cops tell us all the time, just because you didn't know the law doesn't mean you still are not in violation of the law. So you still get this ticket, or you still get this jail time, or you still get X, Y, and Z. Just because you didn't know is not an excuse. And same for law enforcement officers. Just because you claim to not have been trained or know about a law or know about a certain circumstance is no excuse. You deserve prison time for violating people's rights. You deserve prison time for the crimes you commit in the uniform. Like, if you commit crimes in uniform, you deserve to be punished for it. No more of like, oh, well, we're just going to give him training, or we're going to do a reprimand verbally, or a counseling, which goes nowhere and does nothing. And then they destroy that 10 years later or 5 years later. Oh, man, that happened in the past. Don't worry about it. You're still going to make sergeant. Then these people still make rank. And then they poison the branches under them. Like, people always use that excuse. Oh, man, that's just a few bad apples. If I hear that, I'm going to lose my mind. Or the dumbest saying on the planet. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Like, you have to point out to those people, like, you do know the law enforcement officer is breaking the law there, right? Like, that cop broke the law, and he's not going to have any penalty for it. But somehow people are under the belief that people deserve harm for purely just resisting an unlawful arrest, or for not immediately acquiescing to every request from the officer. Like, there are certain situations where you don't have to. If a police officer pulls you over and they ask you to get out of the car, I'm sorry, but you got to do it. They've already ruled on that. You got to get out of the car. But if they tell you, hey, you got to delete that footage, or hey, you can't bring your phone, nope. You're absolutely allowed to have your phone on you. Absolutely allowed to record that interaction, or at least have someone in the car. If there's someone in the car, record your interaction, and then also demand if law enforcement officer, if you're that law enforcement officer, you're on the side of the road, and they demand leadership presence, like a sergeant or somebody above you, and you refuse, you should automatically have your badge torn from your chest and fucking arrested, because now you're refusing to, one, go with policy, because I'm pretty sure it's in a lot of policies out there when somebody asks for a supervisor, that supervisor be en route to somehow get on scene or make a phone call. Two, like, if you're refusing to get a supervisor, you know yourself you are doing dirt. State troopers are the worst about this because they refuse to get leadership all the time. They won't. They fucking won't. They just, oh, no, he's not on today. I'm the highest there is. I'm like, bruh, there's always somebody higher than you. There's always somebody higher than you. And then if people, like, here's the one thing people don't have to do. They don't have to roll down their windows. And so if you break a window because they're not complying with your order, that's not a thing. Oh, and officer safety is fiction. That's fiction. There's no law in the book saying, hey, you absolutely have to be safe in every scenario. So if someone is open carrying and they've committed no crime, or they're not even accused of being committed a crime, then you coming over and unarming them is a violation of their rights. There's no such thing as officer safety in that situation. There's no obligation for a citizen to make you feel safe. Just as the same as there's no obligation for you to make a citizen feel safe by your presence because you're coming armed to a situation. Like, why do you keep perpetuating that fiction? Like, if a journalist who you know is not armed is standing 10, 20 feet away, well, 15, 20 feet away, and they, like pushing them back, it's literally just showing that you're just trying to commit crimes. You're not cool with transparency, and you're not cool in their presence, especially if you know if they're unarmed and you don't have another officer. It's okay. It's okay to call for backup. Hey, send another unit. I got this guy out here filming, so that person could be observed. And then for the people who stand around while people are getting fucked up, like, one, I get it. Two, it's terrifying to see somebody getting their ass whooped and think that could happen to you. So at least be real about your shit and always record the police. Now, two, if you do see something and you have and you have the ability to do the action, and you have the ability to recognize a situation that, yeah, if I do said action, I'm going to get arrested too, but at least that person has the chance to being alive, it's worth it. You're saving a life at that point. You can articulate that to the judge. Hey, this guy was being, suffocated to death. He had 3 people on his back, 1 person on his neck, or 2 people on the back and 1 person on the neck. Like, you're literally killing people. And then, like, for law enforcement who runs into a mental health, they shouldn't be getting mental health calls. That should be like an entirely separate unit. I think the Mesa Police Department here in Arizona has a CERT team, like a crisis team that deals with that. Like, they're specifically trained to deal with that. So they're not, and they're recognizing and having safe holds in order to, like, I don't know how it is that people in the youth working community and the adult community who have mental challenges have a series of safe holds and procedures that we need to abide by, but law enforcement officers don't have that requirement. Like, they don't have any training or any requirement to safely detain people. Like, I'm sorry, but like, a lot of the deaths that occur because there are 10 to 15 officers on a person, and then they wonder why that person stops breathing. Like, really, dumbass. And then every officer involved in that asphyxiation deserves prison time. So even if we go back a couple of years, because this is somehow a mystery of mine too that I need answered, is why is it that law enforcement officers who commit crime, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, but the video just comes out now, they should still be prosecuted. In fact, they should still deserve and get prison time. Why is there a statute of limitations? Why is there a time cap of X amount of years that is arbitrarily made? If a cop commits a crime, they should be at all times prosecuted for it. I'm sorry, but you committed the crime. You did it in uniform. You did it on the government's dime. You should absolutely go to prison for it, regardless of when that evidence surfaces. And the whole fact that departments out there are intentionally, and this is bad in Texas. This is so bad in Texas. Every department, every lawyer out there is fighting hard, so hard, to have information not released to the public because they know it shows officers committing crimes. They know it. So they'll do everything in their power to keep you from having that information for years, because their mentality is, if I can make it go past the statute of limitations, then even if I release it at the 3, 4, or 5 year mark, that officer is not going to get prosecuted because they're out of that window. I'm sorry. Nope. As soon as the people observe that officer and that department committing a crime, even if that officer is no longer there, even if that officer went to a different department or if he moved, it doesn't matter. He should be, there should be a warrant for his arrest. He should be automatically detained no matter where he's at. And he should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law for the crime that he committed, regardless of the timetable. So why is it that people have 2 years to file a civil rights claim, but they have 15 years, whatever, to file a rape case? I don't get it. I'm not understanding that. So we should have way more than 2 years. We should have at least 5 to 10 years to file a civil rights claim against the city, especially it is when it's city lawyers and it's police officers obstructing justice. It's my belief.